Hello, I'm Dr. Angelo Landracina, aka DermAngelo, board-certified dermatologist, skincare nerd, and frugal shopper, here to break down the concept of worth it. There have been so many comments on my videos, on TikTok and Instagram, asking about whether certain products are worth their price, and I wanted to break down this issue for all of you. And I am so happy today to have with me Ramón of Glow By Ramón fame to help me break down this issue.
Hi.
Hi, Ramón. So part of the reason that I got so interested in this topic is that there were a lot of viral TikTok videos of people, whether they be dermatologists or just skincare enthusiasts, going into various stores and just picking up products and telling people if they're worth it with a simple yes or no. I found that this was kind of a reductive sort of concept, and I wanted to delve into it with you a little bit more.
Yes, let's do it. I definitely know what TikToks you were talking about, and I feel that while it is intended to be helpful, what they're really not doing is giving you the full reason, the full story why it might not or might be worthwhile, and I feel excluding that information is really doing a disservice to viewers and subscribers.
So, we're going to jump into this topic a little bit deeper. Before we get started, make sure you're following along on all social media. For me, at DermAngelo, and for Ramón, at Glow By Ramón. We asked some of our followers and subscribers what are some of the things that they look for in a product to decide whether or not it is worth it. One of the themes that came up consistently was this idea of results. A product is worth it if it gets you results. Now, just to unpack that a little bit, with cosmetic products, many of them do not go through studies, they do not go through trials, and a lot of the results we infer about whether or not a product will work is based on research that is not about that specific product.
Yeah, and a good point to elaborate on that is that specifically they might have some trials, quote unquote trials, done on specific ingredients that they're specifically marketing the products around. A good example is HPR, hydroquinone retinoate, which is a super hot retinoid derivative that a few brands use. And if I'm not mistaken, Estee Lauder is the parent company that did the test around this ingredient. And so first of all, when a parent company is the one who does these trials around an ingredient and it's only featured primarily in their products, there's going to be a bias already in that. But as Angelo just mentioned, those experiments are done around a specific set of variables around that ingredient that might not be replicated in the final product. And also, as you just mentioned, those final trials don't necessarily consider how the ingredient specifically featured in the product, and therefore, are you going to get those same benefits overall? Is the ingredient still going to be as bioavailable in the product? There's a lot of things to consider when it comes to, are you going to get these same results that they're talking about in the product as they had in the initial trials with that ingredient or not?
Yeah, and some ingredients that come to mind for me with this topic are ones where the manufacturer has done studies around that ingredient, and then the ingredient is reformulated into another product, and the company that reformulates with that ingredient is citing those original studies. Some ingredients like this that come to mind for me are things like argireline, gram-active retinoid, and the like. Another one that comes to mind is something like matrixyl. That's a peptide that's used in many anti-aging formulations. It's often noted that it does have some wrinkle-reducing properties, but that was based on manufacturer studies, which are, obviously going to have some bias in them. What we're trying to get at here is that deciding whether or not you're going to get results from a product just based on claims is not the whole story. You can only infer so much from what the manufacturers or the company making the actual product are telling you. Now, another issue that came up when talking about results was that many people said they decide if a product is worth it after gauging the results after many months of use or after they reach the end of the product. I personally think that this is a great idea. You actually have firsthand experience with the final product, and you're seeing what it does to your skin specifically.
Yeah, that's definitely something worth considering, especially just because when it comes to skin is subjective. In reality, you can only really base if a product's going to give you the results if you use it yourself after a specific set of time, especially if the product is promising a benefit like brightening or anti-acne or whatnot, just because those aren't results you see overnight. And speaking for myself, for example, I can speak on a product's more instant benefits, like if it's hydrating or if it gives my skin a really nice luminous glow. But I really have to dedicate 4, 6, sometimes even 8 weeks if I'm going to do a brightening product to really tell, is it actually targeting my hyperpigmentation? Am I seeing the benefits of products actually promising before I really go on to my channel or on Instagram and really hype up a product, just because I'm not going to say it works for brightening if I only used it twice over the span of 4 days and in reality it didn't have the time to really do its magic.
I absolutely agree with that. Sometimes I find it really funny that influencers will get something in PR and be like, this water bottle changed my life. I got it yesterday. It definitely takes time to gauge results. However, there are results that you could see instantly, whether that be hydration, how something looks on the skin, a wear test for something like a sunscreen. So the next topic that came up from our followers was the ingredients. People said that they would decide whether or not a product was worth it to buy by looking at the ingredients list. This is a topic that many people have covered over the last year. It's become pretty popular for influencers or consumers to take a deep dive into the INCI list of a product. However, we know that the INCI list is not necessarily a recipe for the product. It doesn't tell you everything about the formula. And this is one of the reasons I'm so happy to have Ramón with me to talk a little bit more about formulation and what you can tell just by reading the INCI list.
Yeah, it's definitely something I'm very passionate about. My favorite analogy for it is cookies, cake, muffin, bread all share a very similar set of ingredients. There's flour, sugar, eggs, milk involved in a lot of those. But in reality, the concentration of those specific ingredients, how they're incorporated, and therefore how they're going to react together to give you a final result, obviously is going to give you a different pastry. And that's very similar to skincare. You have some brands trying to be real transparent with how they label their ingredients, where they actually will give you percentages. But in reality, A, they don't have to. B, that still doesn't tell me a lot. C, that in no way designates a transparent company or the fact that it's more effective than brands who don't label those percentages. In reality, there's only so much you can tell from an ingredients lists, and it's a very nuanced, very complicated. I can't even do that. I can't look at a product and be like, oh, I see this INCI list and I know exactly what's in it, how it got put in, and how it was made. It's not that simple.
Yeah, I mean, from a dermatologist standpoint, it is my understanding, I'm not a formulator, that the INCI list is there in order for people to be able to see if there is something that they are allergic to in that product. So from my standpoint, I would say that should be your primary use of reading an ingredients list.
And also just because there's nuance in what an ingredient can do in a product based on how much of it there is or how it's incorporated in. Certain ingredients can be perfuming or fragrance agents, but some of them could also be preservatives if used in proper amounts. Some of them can be solvents for other ingredients. An ingredient isn't necessarily just what you see on the surface. There is a lot of nuance into how it can be used in a product to gauge a final product. Sometimes you have brands like umbrella companies that will use similar formulations in a series of products in various sub-brands they might carry, but how those ingredients are, again, combined can make a huge difference from product to product.
So another criteria that came up a lot from our followers that they use to decide whether or not a product is worth it is recommendations and reviews. I find this really interesting because there are so many different types of recommendations or reviews you could get. Reviews or recommendations from people that you know, influencers that you follow who may have a financial interest in talking about a product, or some of the reviews that you might find on retailer websites. Now, we need to recognize that there is some bias that's going to be involved at any of these levels, whether that be a financial interest, if something is recommended as part of an ad, whether it be the specifics of the person's skin type or their own personal likes and dislikes about a product. This is also part of the reason why I say that you should have various different information sources, not just for scientific information, but also for product reviews. Follow a varied group of sources for your information, including dermatologists, formulators, maybe even just product reviewers who you know have similar skin types to you.
I 100% agree. First and foremost, definitely reading the reviews for products itself is a really good source. Those are generally non-influencers, non-content creators. Those are real-life consumers who wanted to leave a review about their experience with the product. So I think that's always a good way to gauge it. I mean, I do that when I buy anything anything off Amazon just because I want to know what the everyday person thought of the product. But on top of that, like Angelo just mentioned, having a varied source of information is really helpful to gauge overall what a general consensus of a product is, whether if it's effective, what the sensory experience is, how it's going to feel on various different skin types. Just because, again, skin is subjective. Going off of one person isn't going to necessarily be the most accurate indication of what your own personal experience of that product is going to be. For example, I do a lot of sunscreen content, and my whole thing is brown skin friendly. Is a sunscreen going to leave a white cast? And obviously, I am very mid-tier when it comes to skin tone. So if a product leaves a white cast on me, my general assumption is it should for deeper skin tones, but has that always been the case? No. And then the other point is I can't speak for deeper skin tones when it comes to how a product's going to look on, deeper, darker skin. So I personally always try to have receipts in my own videos for other creators who have tried the product. You can see the application footage on them so that you have a more accurate gauge of, is this product going to work for you, just by watching my one video. So definitely having different sources to go off of is super important. Working in the science community, Angelo could probably speak to this too. When you're researching something, you go to various sources to see what are these various sources saying about this one ingredient. And so I definitely agree that go to different people to find a specific opinion about a product you're into before you really deep dive, instead of just going off one person.
I think that's a very good point that you bring up about, sunscreen wear tests. I do some sunscreen reviews, especially on Instagram, and people will often ask me about white cast. I have said before, white cast would be the name of my foundation shade, so it's difficult to judge just based on me. So I also try to share reviews of the same sunscreens from creators with deeper skin tones, just so that people get a better idea of how sunscreens may look on them. This has also become much more important as there's been a large shift in the market towards mineral sunscreens over the last year or so, which no comment on that, but... Another topic that I wanted to bring up that didn't necessarily come up through our followers, but actually came from my own mind, was the idea of cosmetic elegance. This video was actually inspired by a TikTok that I did about my favorite vitamin C serum of all time, SkinCeuticals CE Ferulic. I got so many comments asking me if it was worth it based on the $166 price tag. And you know what? I didn't have a good answer. I don't know your budget. I don't know what your skin is like. I love this product, and part of the reason I love it is because of its cosmetic elegance. What is cosmetic elegance? Cosmetic elegance is, I feel like nothing makes me glowier or makes my skin look better than this serum. That's part of the reason I love it. That's part of the reason it's worth it for me. However, you could probably get comparable results from a product that is less expensive, and that's part of the reason why the concept of worth it is so dependent on what is in your budget specifically and what's worth it for you.
I've never actually tried the CE Ferulic from SkinCeuticals. I've seen everyone rave about it, but to me what it comes down to is it's expensive. That's not in my budget necessarily. To Angelo's point about cosmetic elegance, that is actually a really important factor when it comes to product development in cosmetics. You always look at what do consumers want, what do consumers look for in their products, and therefore what am I trying to create as a result of that. Skin feel is a huge factor in people wanting to use a product, and other factors are obviously sensory. A lot of people do like smell. As much as people are very anti-fragrance, a lot of consumers generally want to have some sort of sensory experience when it comes to the smell of a product. And also sometimes even just the look of it, how people perceive a specific ideal of a product. For example, like hydrating products look this way, moisturizing products look this way, is also a factor when it comes to developing a product. So cosmetic elegance is a huge factor, and a lot of brands as a result of that invest a lot of effort and money into devising the most elegant, the most extravagant sensorial experience you can get out of a product. Angelo uses SkinCeuticals as an example. I use La Mer. La Mer is expensive for the sake of being expensive. That is using a luxury skincare product, but people love that. Are their products good? Objectively, they're actually decent. They're decent products, right?
Yeah, they're fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them. I'm not sure if, I would necessarily go out and spend the money. I have not tried much of their line, just the original cream, and I liked it.
Case in point, it's not bad products, and just because they smell great and they're meant to just give you this taste of luxury doesn't mean that's bad either. Some people will put the money into those kinds of products because to them that's worth it, but then on the other point, as Angela mentioned, you could get comparable results to the SkinCeutical vitamin C with other products. products. And what it comes down to, especially for the SkinCeuticals, is ascorbic acid. Hard to work with, hard to keep stable, and hard to keep as effective and essentially fresh. And SkinCeuticals, I believe they have a patent for that formula because they did put the time and research into developing as good of quality of a product as they do have. For a lot of people, a product being fun to use and looking good and feeling good is to them worth it.
Yeah, so I mean, SkinCeuticals does have a patent on this product, and that's part of the reason why I say there are no dupes for this. However, you don't need a dupe for this. You could have other products that are stable vitamin C's that don't use the same technology. There are several ways to skin a cat. From a cosmetic elegance standpoint, there are other vitamin C serums that I really like. The Ordinary's ascorbic acid and alpha-arbutin serum. I think that's a good product. It is a fraction of the price of this. However, the cosmetic elegance is generally not as good. Some people find that it feels greasy on the skin. It does burn on application. And part of the reason for that is it's only made out of 3 ingredients. In some ways, you do get what you pay for, but that doesn't mean that you need to spend a ton of money to see results.
Worth it is a very subjective thing, and I think reducing worth it down to just a simple yes or no without going into the details doesn't say a lot, especially because in reality, I don't believe there's such thing as a bad skincare product most of the time. It honestly just comes down to, is the product going to work for you or is it going to work for someone else? Is it made for a specific demographic that you don't fit into? That's what a lot of times people don't really consider. It's not as black and white as people think.
I've often also said there's no such thing as a bad product. There's just products that are right for you or not. So thank you, Ramon, for joining me today.
Of course, thank you.
Also, make sure you head over to Ramon's channel, Glow by Ramón, to check out our collab on intentional skincare. If you liked this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up down below, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you get notified every time I upload. Ciao!